Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi everyone, my name's Natasha Anasike. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm here to share my story today. So I'm starting off with talking about the concept of healing. So the concept of healing, at least it starting with you, isn't something revolutionary or unheard of. It makes sense that in order to work through your issues and traumatic experiences, you have to do the inner work. We've all heard this before, because in this day and age, healing is almost its own lifestyle brand, something that can be capitalized on. Because if you're one of the rare few humans on this earth who believe that you are perfect, 30 minutes on social media, you'll soon find something within yourself needing fixing and a pricey instant solution to match. What I was hoping to do today was to hold space to show the rawness of healing, a glimpse into the messy, unfiltered version of it. Part of that is also recognizing that, at least for me, that there wasn't just one moment or one defining night that had me feeling like I had hit rock bottom. There was a period of my life where this was the only way I could sit with myself, the only way I was able to ground myself enough to allow myself to sit in my thoughts, my racing mind, open to vulnerability, yet still the harshest critic I've ever faced. I just remember placing my palms on each side of me onto the cool tiles as I sat on the floor, leaning onto the cabinet or hunched over, usually sobbing. It was a small house and it wasn't silent as everyone slept. But none of it mattered in that moment because it was like I had no control of myself at that time. The heavy weight in my chest, the pounding force in my head, trying to curl my fingers into the floor but not being able to grasp anything. Everything felt tight and impossible. If I had to capture some of the repeating headlines in my mind, it mostly revolved around trying to convince myself that my breath wasn't a waste of air. Trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with my life, which is normal for a teenager getting ready to finish high school, but it did extend beyond that. The best way I can describe it as me trying to find my place in the world, a sense of belonging. I was trying to fit into some box, an identity I could ground myself in. At a first glance, I already appeared as an odd one out, being biracial. There were maybe 5 Black students at my high school, including my sister. And that was after my high school had also merged with a neighboring high school to form a much larger cohort. I wasn't a perfect grade A student or particularly athletic. I had a passion for music and arts, but wouldn't consider myself some hidden talent or made to perform. I had a few closer friends, otherwise friendly with the masses. When it came to connecting with people, I had a few experiences that were really pivotal in my exposure to severe anxiety in my early childhood. And that was always a lingering reminder. So as I grew up, I tended to keep my circle of true friends small. It's funny even saying that because none of those true friends knew what I was going through internally, not really. I was not the type to be open and share. I feel like a standard shared experience, at least for girls in high school here in Australia, is when you have that one friend and they would be going through something, whether it was a heartbreak, friend betrayal, family issue, and they skip class or were not seen during recess because they were off somewhere having a breakdown. And there would be one or two friends who would ask, who would know what's going on, and others would come and ask if they're okay, what happened. And the consoling friends would just say, yeah, they're okay. They're just going through something, not really going into any detail, of course. And while you tell yourself it's not your business to share what's going on with them, you felt special being relied upon. Whilst a lot of tears were shed in those years, it wasn't natural for me to sit and talk about how I was feeling. So you wouldn't find me sitting and crying somewhere, surrounded by my closest friends who knew the ins and outs of what was going on. Remember, I am my harshest critic. So I would tell myself that sitting and wallowing in public is not what we do. We, as in me. These rules only applied to me because if someone else was struggling and needing help, you can bet I dropped everything to do what I could at the time. So it didn't matter that I had to sit with this tightness in my chest, my stomach in knots constantly, headaches, loss of appetite, blood noses, insomnia. I had to suck it up and keep going. Until over time, the mask had started to slip. I was already somewhat in survival mode, but it got to the point where I was questioning whether I was going to see tomorrow, contemplating self harm and repeating thoughts of committing suicide and how I would go about it. Part of me felt even more messed up at the time that I couldn't even go through with that. I truly felt like I was failing at everything, and it started a vicious cycle. It was messy navigating all of this while still going through the standard adolescent experience as I was still growing. My body was changing. Of course, emotions were heightened. Whilst mood swings were a regular thing, I tended to tip towards the low or numb side of the scale. We can also throw in here grief and trauma, financial hardship, abandonment issues, stepping up as a second parent to my siblings, with my mother, single, experiencing disability, the complicated dynamic of a second parent re entering your life after many years, who carries very strict and traditional values. And I ended up creating this narrative where my worth equated to what I could achieve, to be what they wanted me to be versus who I really was. And at that point, I don't know who I really was. And that's just how I existed, one precious day at a time. As I mentioned prior, the mask was already slipping. And eventually, those closest around me caught a glimpse of what I was facing day to day. This led to me sitting in a waiting room with my mum, who had taken me to my first consultation appointment with a psychologist. I remembered feeling so uneasy sitting in that chair, yet so indifferent in a way, because I had spoken to so many counselors and social workers before. How was this supposed to be any different? I told myself I would do this for my mum, for those who I loved and I didn't want to disappoint. And I lived in that essence for so long. It was all I was some days, existing for others. Whilst it kept me going and was better than not existing at all, it could only sustain me for so long. It sucked. And honestly, I can't identify a clear turning point where things started to change for the better. Therapy is messy and life doesn't stop to give you time to sort your stuff out. And I wish that I reminded myself more of that. But I was tackling therapy the same way I tackled everything else in my life, giving it my best, whilst externally I still tried to wear that mask. And I was exploring new things like navigating early adulthood, trying to get into higher education with an insanely low ATAR score, navigating my first serious relationship and the challenges that had come with that at the time. Looking back on it, it makes me laugh and want to cry at the same time because I was so harsh on myself and I took myself so seriously because of that self pressure and my perfectionist tendencies. The good part is that if you have a decent therapist, they see right through it anyways. I had learned to become more comfortable with my emotions, all the tears. Like I said, there were so many. Eventually, each session started to pivot my purpose to a mindset of, hey, maybe I'm not so screwed up. Maybe life is worth living. Maybe I could try showing up for me. I won't say that that's where the work started, but it was definitely a recognition of, okay, this is me locking in for the long haul. Dreading therapy turned into looking forward to therapy, most times, anyways, and had set the foundation for other key aspects of my life to support me through this healing journey, like putting in the time and effort to attend university. At this point, I still didn't know what I was wanting to do with my life and what it would look like on the other side if I would come out with a complete degree. What I was able to do over time was remember how much I actually loved learning and eventually found a way to approach myself in a similar manner. It also helped to have something to shift my focus towards sometimes because your mind needs that break too. Healing is not something you can do all hours, day and night. No matter how much I try to push myself at times, it's not instantaneous and requires time and patience. I was also fortunate enough to meet so many incredible people over the years from different walks of life. Some of these people have come and gone, which is okay. I truly believe in trusting the timing. You can encounter someone and they share some nugget of wisdom or tell their own life story, and that's their purpose for existing in your life at the time. Then there are others, some amazing supportive women in my personal and professional life who I've been able to create relationships with, role models I look up to because they truly honor who they are. And exchanged for being their authentic self, it only felt right for me to unmask myself over time so I could meet them with the same authenticity they showed me. And it really allowed me to grow over time with an invaluable team in my corner, the type that are able to reflect on your progress with you, celebrate your wins with you, show you how truly far you've come. And honestly, sitting with that can be hard, especially if you've really shaped life to be this thing of suffering and hardship, survival of the fittest, or maybe the luckiest. That's why it's always important to remember that this journey is not linear. It helps to have something to come home to. And I mean that in the sense of grounding yourself in the present. For some, it can be movement, music. Others might be connecting with nature, animals. For me, it's tapping into my creativity in some shape or form. It can be writing, sketching, whatever feels right at the time. I've also spent most of this year really tapping into my faith and spirituality, unlike anything I've done before. And I truly have no words for how much this has changed my life. And I'm not saying this to enforce any practices or beliefs on anyone, purely for the purpose of being able to help you identify what your thing is, how you want to feel. Over time, you'll start to see the results. Whether big or small, it's important to celebrate these wins. A few years ago, if you told me I would end up where I am today, I would have not believed you. Having graduated with 2 bachelor degrees, building up the confidence to get my driver's license, which led me to get my own car, having the strength to step away from an unhealthy relationship, which was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. From struggling to maintaining casual employment to being able to show up in a full-time role and being bold enough to invest in myself, to have some type of career, and eventually being able to buy my own home. That's all the external stuff. Still important, yes, but cannot be done without the internal milestones, which are just as important. Reparenting myself, questioning the status quo, approaching the hard rules that were set for me in my life with curiosity, unlearning coping mechanisms that were no longer serving me, training my inner critic to only show up when necessary versus on a constant loop on the daily. It would be impossible to capture every single learned lesson from across the last 10 years within the next 2 minutes, so I'll leave you with these key three. The first is jumping back to the intro when I said healing starts with you. Not just that, but the moment when you start putting in the work for you, not your parents, not your kids, not your partner, but for you. But that doesn't mean you have to do it alone. My second point is that it's okay to ask for help. With the right people backing you, it truly makes a difference. Whether it's a therapist, a friend, your neighbor, it doesn't matter who they are, but how they are showing up in your life. Because going through this healing journey, it's vulnerable. You feel naked and exposed. You will confront so much. So if anyone around you judges you for how you're feeling as you go through this, take a step back and question what value they bring to your life at this time. It's okay to outgrow people, the same way we outgrow clothes or interests. Why? Because this will only work if you're willing to change. This is my third point. You'll only be able to grow going outside your comfort zone, doing something different. That's why not everything and everyone will go with you when you embark on this. You're essentially breaking yourself down to rebuild yourself from the ground up, transforming suffering into salvation. And it's not about glorifying the trauma and hardships. It's giving them, your experiences, a voice, understanding them and showering them with gentle compassion. Being able to hold them carefully and say, I know it was painful to go through this, and I wouldn't wish this upon anybody. You have taught me so much, and I honor that. So in order for me to now move forward and seek a lighter direction in my path, I need to be open to shifting my perspective. I can't say that when I now stand in front of a mirror in my bathroom, I'm always showing up as this confident, go-getter, motivated person that has their life together constantly. But what I can say is that every day I'm showing up as I'm still becoming.
Wow, Natasha, what a journey you've been on. It's very, very inspiring to see a young woman your age going through so much and coming out on the other side with such positivity. It's very inspiring. Now, let's unpack your journey and your story for you to get to where you are now. Now, take us back to that moment on the bathroom floor. What were you feeling, and what did that moment teach you about survival?
Um, Honestly, it's like I mentioned, it's hard to sort of capture exactly what I was thinking at the time, but a
Mm,
lot of it was me wrestling with how I wanted to move forward in my life, whether I was going to move forward, whether this was sort of the end of it all, as bad as that sounds.
mm,
Um, it was definitely a lot of thoughts that were probably out of proportion with reality, but when you're going through that, it honestly feels like the world is ending. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's tough. Now, one of the things that you mentioned is that you described yourself as your harshest critic. How did you begin transforming that inner voice into one of compassion?
It was definitely understanding that side of me that was, I guess, the first stepping stone. So instead of trying to ignore the critical side of me, understanding why it was there, why it existed, its purpose. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't there to necessarily destroy me, you could say.
Mm.
But it was trying to exist there out of love, to protect me. And like I said, it was really about retraining it, to only show up when necessary, to sort of tell myself, hey, it's okay, I'm actually fine, you don't need to panic here. Yeah, showing it love.
Yeah, they do say that that voice is really our ego that is trying to protect us. And the more you try and push it away, it gets louder and louder. But when you start having these conversations that, look, I'm okay, I need to do what I'm doing for me, you have a different dance with it than when you try and resist it.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what role did therapy play in helping you to find your voice again after years of silence?
Definitely like the backbone of all this, I guess, healing and rediscovering myself. It definitely gave me a sense of direction. It allowed me to question things I would never think to question before about my life and who I was. So I would definitely say it was the guiding force to me being able to work through this.
That's awesome. It makes such a difference. So, growing up as the eldest child of a single mom, how did those early responsibilities shape your resilience, do you think?
That's an interesting question. I think it got to the point where I kind of just had to accept my role, and there were things that needed to be done, and I couldn't necessarily question it. I would say it became my sole identity for quite some time, and I, I had to really unpack that over the
Mm,
years as well, to know that I'm me beyond that, um,
yes,
which was hard to do. But yeah, definitely was. It felt like my sole identity for quite some time growing up.
that's so good. Now, you faced grief, financial hardship, and identity struggles. What kept you going when everything felt impossible?
Yeah. Like I said, my when I first was approaching this, my loved ones were definitely who I kept in mind going through this, trying to
Hmm.
figure things out. Um, it was hard to frame it from the perspective that I was doing this for me, because I wouldn't have been able to pull the strength to like continue and persevere. So I definitely kept those closest to me in mind as I was approaching this.
That's just wonderful. Now, you've come out on the other side, and when you look back at your teenage self, what would you tell her now about belonging and worthiness?
Um, I, I would probably say that to um, trust the plan. And when I say that, I do mean it from like, depending on your beliefs. For me, I do believe in God. So trusting in God, trusting in the timing of things, knowing that if this was placed in my path, that it's been put there for a reason and that I'm able to get through it. I don't think my younger self would believe that necessarily, but I would try and I would try and tell her that that yeah, she does have the strength to get through this.
I love it. It's always interesting when you look at life in retrospect, right?
Yeah.
So, how has your mental health journey influenced the way that you support job seekers in your career now?
It's definitely helped me do what I do from a very holistic point of view,
Mm,
because being on that side of the system, it's very easy to feel like you're just another number.
Yeah.
So yeah, just remembering that you're working with people, and people are complicated, people are messy, they're going through their own thing. So yeah, just very important to consider where they're at mentally as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, sometimes we forget all of that. So, what are the biggest misconceptions that people have about depression and anxiety?
Um, I think the way that depression and anxiety can show up for people,
Hmm.
and I would say this would probably stem from maybe like social media, or just media in general, movies, TV. It's different for everybody. The way our body can feel and react to certain things, and not realizing that it's actually stemming from your anxiety or from your low mood because you're depressed. Um, Everyone's journey looks different. So I think just being careful with yourself, being gentle with yourself,
Hmm.
just because depression and anxiety looks like that for someone doesn't mean it's going to look like that for you. So just
Yep,
honor your own journey, your own experiences.
that's so true. Now, you spoke about grounding yourself in faith and meditation. How do these practices help you to stay centered today?
Yeah, so I am an overthinker. I
Mhm.
spend a lot of time in my head, which is probably evident in some of the things I mentioned today. So, meditation and faith have really, especially this year, have been so pivotal in me recentering myself, grounding myself, being present, which is really important. It gives me breathing room, allow me to not think about things, stepping away from the day to day. I'm able to essentially bring some inner peace to my life, which I never thought was possible. But it takes practice, and it's achievable. So, yeah, I just keep showing up and honoring that.
I love that. So, what does finding strength within yourself truly mean to you now after everything that you've lived through?
I think it's continuing to show up for yourself. It's probably the biggest thing. It, I definitely used to think it was like having it all figured out, having it all put together, being emotionless, because that's examples I saw from other people.
Yeah.
You can still be an emotional wreck and still be really strong. It doesn't cancel. They don't cancel each other out. So I think just showing up, even if it's at your bare minimum, that's true strength.
Mm. So, how did your experience with redundancy and loss of direction become a turning point rather than an ending for you?
Yeah, this was a really interesting experience, because I definitely didn't see it coming. And it was growing into that role. I thought, like, oh, I was finally finding my place. This was it. And being made redundant, really, I had to show up for myself more than I had so far ever in my career. So really advocating for myself as I was applying for new jobs and speaking with people. I had never
Mhm.
done that before. So it was finding this new sense of confidence and being able to believe in myself so I could show other people that I was worth believing in, essentially. So yeah, it was a new challenge, but I think it was really, I had to go through that to show that I'm able to stand up for myself. So
Yeah, it's so true. Unless you're able to advocate and stand for yourself and be your own fan, your own biggest fan, you can't expect
yeah,
anybody else to see that in you unless you see it in yourself. That is so true.
yeah.
Now, what message would you want to leave us, especially young women in Australia and around the world, to take from your story?
It would be yeah, that it starts with you. The healing starts with you. And it takes a lot to sort of filter it down to finding why you want to start that journey. It can feel really discouraging comparing yourself to other people as well, which I find a lot of people, women, I mean, everyone tends to do, but experiencing that before, seeing whether, it's a friend or a colleague and they're doing all these amazing things. Why can't I get to where they are? That type of thinking. Yeah, like I said, everyone's journey is going to look different, but you really have to want to get started for you, because that's going to really solidify how you approach your journey from the beginning.
Yeah, that's so true. Any parting thoughts for our audience today, or is there any question I should have asked you and I didn't?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about the questions. I feel like there are a good range of questions there. But yeah, I really, this opportunity to speak on here was really fantastic. And I even just going through this and sort of crafting what I wanted to say today was a huge learning experience for me too, and a good way to reflect on my journey, which I hadn't done previously. So thank you, Gertrude, for giving me that opportunity to do that.
It's absolutely wonderful. We always have to stop and look back to see how far we've come. I think as women, we forget to do that a lot of the time. So thank you so much for coming online and sharing your story.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Natasha, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.